Hello, hello, hello. We are live. I've got a new headset thing that I'm still trying to get used to. And welcome to the Green Umbrella Live Lunch. So we weren't here last week. We were all really, really busy. So you didn't spot us live streaming then. But we're here today. We're on episode, I've got no idea what episode.
I can't remember. 120, I think.
100 and whatever it is. So we are here. I mean, since we started this, there's very few weeks that we've missed, but we are now getting to that point where we kind of go, right, do you know what? If it's not practical for us to be everywhere at once, then there's stresses going on and that kind of thing, that we just have to accept that we're going to miss the week. I think we're allowed every now and then to just go like, do you know what? Work comes first, clients come first, all that sort of thing. As long as we're showing up consistently, and it's only sort of very rarely that we're not doing it. So, and I think this is important when you start stuff like this as well, that you kind of don't give yourself a hard time if you have to skip an episode. Right? If things don't align, we shouldn't give ourselves a hard time. But last week was tricky because we had. I was at an event speaking, so I was speaking at the very first conference for dance business owners and principals, which was actually really cool to be part of. So I was speaking at that. Jane had the day off.
I did.
So we were taking the mickey because we were saying that Jane was going to be sat there with her feet up, but actually, for Jane and I, it was both like results day for our kids. But Jane, you were doing the mad school blitz, like doing all that stuff in one day.
Buying clothes for sixth form.
Yeah. Nicole was on holiday, so today is her first day back from a holiday. So we sort of said like, no, Nicole, you go catch up on your emails. Don't have the additional stress on your first day back. And I think she's already feeling it. You know what it's like when you have a week off and it just feels a little bit like you don't know where you are. I think she's in that place at the minute. So she's getting a hold of things. Right. Mark is about to disappear off of this. Okay.
Hello and goodbye.
He will be back. So basically all the three of us are gone and Mark was left holding the reins. And it's really funny because like this week we were like, we've got to do it because we skipped last week. But now it's like, I've had a banging headache for 3 days. I'm like, I've literally, it took me about 2 hours to get dressed this morning because I was just like, I just like my head. It's the first day of the month. So Jane is absolutely rammed with like new clients coming. It's invoice day. There's like loads of stuff. People, it's just a nightmare day. And Mark's having tech issues. So he's going to be disappearing because Chris is calling him. And Chris has just said it's going to be a long call. So it's one of those things, you know, when you have to, sometimes things happen, you just have to deal with them. Like hell or high water, it's like everything else has to be paused and you have to deal with it. Sometimes it's family stuff and you go like, right, family comes first. But sometimes it is like tech issues. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you just have to deal with them, don't you? So yeah, funny. But it's good because we're just going to go with it and we'll see what happens. And this is the joy of live streaming, is that, you know, if all of a sudden it's only Jane left on the call, then Jane will just have to go with it. And I think we've had that happen a couple of times in the past where it's like someone's internet's just cut out. We've gone, or expecting a guest and there's been tech issues in the last minute, and we've just had to go, right, okay, well, that's not happening, let's make it up as we go along instead. But that's what I love about being live. So Jane, it has been a full-on week, hasn't it? It's like
absolutely
so much has been happening. So, and yet if you look at the diary, it should have been like an easier week than usual. Like this is probably, like diary wise, this should have been probably the quietest week outside of that week between Christmas and New Year of of the year, but we've just been flat out.
Definitely, yeah. It's all landed at once.
So we're going to try and keep this episode pretty short because, like I said, there's tons going on. But there's a couple of things we really wanted to chat about. So I sort of said there's one, like, let's just talk about this one story because it's quite important. But you've got something else as well, haven't you? So let's do that first. You've got one little story.
Yeah, I have. It was just quite interesting. It's about YouTube, this one. So basically, I was just reading an article today about more and more people are watching their YouTube videos at a faster speed. And I was like, well, that didn't even cross my mind to watch a video at a faster speed. But so anyway, I read the article. And yeah, so apparently, first thing in the morning, people watch their videos at normal speed. And as you go through the day, people are watching them faster. And there's a little dip between 7 and 8 p.m, which is dinner time. So presumably all these people watching their phones and whatever while they eat their dinner are watching at normal speed again. And then from
Losers.
9 p.m. to 1 a.m, it gets faster again. So 1.5 times is the most popular. But sometimes by midnight or so, people are up at 2 times speed. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing. So I've got my kids and 3 friends here at the minute. And so I just nipped in and asked them a minute ago if they ever do it. And only one of them actually does, and he tends to do it later. But yeah, it was just an interesting thing because obviously people are time pressures, and I guess they're just trying to consume as much as they can in as fast a possible time as they can. But what I thought was more interesting actually is for brands, is a thing to think about, isn't it, really? Is that if people are doing that with your videos, then maybe you just need to think about what will happen if someone does that with your video. People are obviously having a short attention span, so maybe you need to keep your videos shorter and, yeah, perhaps see what happens if it's sped up and whether people can actually still understand it and listen.
That's really, really interesting. I don't actually watch a lot of YouTube videos. I'm just not a YouTuber. It's yeah. If there's something like I really can't work it out, and I've got through a lot of stress and frustration before I actually go, right, YouTube, there must be a video to show me how to do it, right? In that situation, I don't use it. I will move through the video. But yeah, I never use that on YouTube.
No,
I wouldn't even think to. Isn't that funny?
Although I might now.
Yeah, whereas voice notes, all the time.
Oh, right, okay.
All the time. Like there's some people that more so in groups. Okay, so in WhatsApp groups, people send voice notes in there, and it's like sometimes you see it, you can see how. In fact, Kim's just this is a bit naughty. Is Kim Nicole out? So Nicole's 5-minute voice notes. That's quite funny. But yeah, sometimes I want to send a voice note, and it's like they've not really thought about what they've wanted to say beforehand. And you're just like, oh my God, get to the end, make the point. So, and I'm not suggesting that's Nicole's voice. Oh my God, what am I saying? Yeah, Kim says she loves you, Nicole. I love you too. Well, Nicole doesn't send me voice notes, so I'm feeling a bit left out. But yeah, sometimes I am double speed, so I can actually hear if is there actually something in here I need to listen to? And if it is, then I'll take it back to that bit and listen to it at normal speed. But yeah, I think my voice notes are almost permanently on double speed.
All right, fair enough.
But the thing is, how do you? I don't know how you plan for that. How would you kind of go, right? People are some people are going to be listening to me on double speed. So how do I speak in a way with a cadence where at double speed people can understand me, but at normal speed I don't sound really dull?
Yeah, it did say it was tricky, to be fair. It was more about making sure you keep your videos concise because people don't want to sit there for ages watching them. So yeah, there is no easy way, is there? Because otherwise you sound like a chipmunk when it's sped up, don't you? So you don't want that either.
It's quite interesting though. But again, it also, in the back of my head, I'm thinking maybe this is another reason why Reels have had the success that they have, since Reels and TikToks have had that success, because obviously they're very short and people want to say a lot in those 15 seconds or 30 seconds. So they probably are naturally speaking that bit faster. You've got the captions going as well, which just helps people to keep pace with the video. So maybe it is thinking about stuff like that when you're producing your video that will really help.
Definitely. Actually, you saying that about captions just reminded me about something else. I hope it's okay to mention this as well. It was an article I'd read a couple of weeks ago about so many people using subtitles on the TV and on videos. And I mean, it's not something I've ever done or ever thought about, putting the subtitles on the telly. But apparently it's a big thing, especially with younger people. And I caught my son doing it the other day. He was watching a YouTube video with the subtitles on. I was like, do you do that all the time? And he said, yes. And apparently it is a huge thing now, partly because of sound issues. And again, though, because you can be a bit more distracted, perhaps. I'm not really sure. But yeah, so that's another thing, is to make sure your subtitles are good, because actually a lot of people do use them.
Do you know, that's really interesting. So I was actually laughing. It's good that my parents don't really understand what I do and never tune into anything like this. Although it would be really funny if my mum just commented right now, wouldn't it, on Facebook? My brother and I were laughing about the fact that, so my parents, like, I love them, but they are not tech people at all. So quite often you'll turn up at their house and the TV's like, it's quite loud, and they've got the subtitles on. And the joke is, it's like they don't know how to turn it on. And every time one of us is there, we turn it off again. And then next time you go, it's back on again. So it's obviously like fat fingers on the buttons, isn't it? Right. And, but it's like they just sit there, like you've got to imagine, in between our visits, they're sat there for days watching TV with really loud with the subtitles on. And it's like, we were sort of, basically laughing at them about it, really, and like go like, oh, well, how ridiculous. So that's really interesting that you've said that. Yeah. Maybe it is a generational thing.
Yeah, perhaps it is. I mean, a lot of people did say, because it is annoying sometimes, isn't it, when your music's really loud, but the voices are quieter and you're constantly having to adjust the volume, which I do. But yeah, I guess if that's annoying, just stick the subtitles on. But it's not something I'd ever thought of doing. And I was really shocked when my kids did it.
Right, here's another thing that I think is possibly an age thing. Okay, and not an age thing, because that's like, I think it's a generational thing. So at the minute, so the way my day works, I've kind of like, in the morning, I don't have any TV. Like, I've only literally just arrived at the office at like 10 to 12 to do this. I've been working at home this morning. From the moment I got out of bed, I haven't had the TV on, no music, no radio, nothing. Okay. And that is like my ideal morning. I'm just focused on what I'm doing my emails. I rang my elder daughter and caught up with her for however long. And, was sort of chatting to her on the phone whilst I was working. But other than that, the house was peaceful and quiet, just how I like it. Okay. So I come in and do my day. Generally, I'm home about 7ish. So I arrive at the office at 9 usually, or start working at 9, finish about 7. I don't then do any work after that. So, have some food, maybe a glass of wine. And then it's like, okay, what we're going to watch on the TV. Okay. So right now, there is nothing box set wise that I'm interested in watching. There's box sets that I could rewatch, and I would quite happily rewatch, but I'm just like, I want to, there's better things to do with my time right now. It's kind of communal time. So it doesn't feel right to be like sat there on my own listening to my podcast or listening to an audiobook or something like that. So I'm like, and then you start channel hopping, right? Trying to find something to watch. There's no documentaries that I want to watch at the minute. Like, all the documentaries I'm interested in, I've watched. So there's nothing popping up there. And it's funny because I never, ever in that moment think, what should I watch on YouTube? And yet all my favorite podcasts all have a video option on YouTube, where rather than listening to it bit by bit in the car, I could actually watch the whole interview on YouTube instead of a box set of whatever mindless crap there is. But whereas I think, do your kids watch YouTube on as if it was another?
Yeah,
TV
they never
channel?
Watch normal telly ever.
Isn't it
watch
funny?
YouTube and occasionally Netflix.
Is it? And yet there's so many things actually available on YouTube that are like that episodic content that we like. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think anyone's going to watch episodes of Live Lunch back to back. But I guess, I don't know, Paul Green, our resident stalker, might be raising his hand right now going, yeah, it's me. But yeah, I don't think of YouTube as an option when I'm thinking about like what's on what channel.
No, me neither. Not at all.
And yet, but on a Saturday morning, I do.
Okay.
On a Saturday morning is like podcast time. What podcast am I going to watch? And literally, it's like on the screen on YouTube. And I tell you why that came about. It's because I was listening to the podcast on my phone, but having, I don't know what the words are. I'm in this world, but I'm actually not very techie. But when you connect your phone, so you can make the TV play your sound, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. And I suddenly thought, why aren't I actually watching this?
Good point.
Like, hello. So that's my Saturday morning thing now, my little ritual, if you like. But I do think it's a generational thing that we just don't think of consuming YouTube content in that way.
Yeah,
AirPlay.
right.
See,
Yes,
Kim's
that's
on
what it's
it.
called, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an AirPlay thing. So yeah, awesome. Right. Getting distracted because my phone's going with messages. So the other thing we were going to talk about was related to SEO. So obviously it would have been really useful for Mark to be here.
Yes.
And he's not, because Chris, our resident IT guy, so a quick plug, Chris Lambert, Data Sense, looks after all our IT issues, and is actually really, really responsive. So when this morning, Mark... Oh
God.
honestly, I'm surprised this eye is open. It's like so painful right now. And yes, I have taken the paracetamol and everything else I can get my hands on this morning. But yeah, like when Mark went, like this is like a major issue of, like, literally it was about probably less than an hour ago that I had that call with Mark where he's like, I need help. Rang Chris. And Chris is already on it. So you've got IT issues in your business, you need new IT people. Then as long as Mark doesn't rejoin the call now and go, oh God, that was a waste of time, then let's call Chris at Data Sense, right? Awesome. Okie dokie. But yeah, so there's this SEO thing that's happening. Okay, so, and I know, Jane, you don't know loads and loads about this because I've been looking at it for ages. And then I was chatting to Mark about it, and you're kind of in the dark, it's kind of what happens. This is why we do live lunch, especially working remotely. Like sometimes I'll have a conversation with Jane about something, and in my head, it's like everyone in the office was there then. It's like, actually, no, it was in that 5-minute slot there where we were the only 2 people in the office, or it was the chat we had after a client meeting where I suddenly had that brilliant idea, and I just think everyone knows about it. So live lunch gives us a great place to come together and talk about this stuff. Okay. So what's the Google update? We have kind of talked about it a little while ago. Okay. It's called the Helpful Content Update. Do you remember a few months ago, there was an announcement that Google was going to make this shift in the algorithm, and it was really about finally putting the nail in the coffin around, basically, if you've got a site that's got really heavily SEO'd content, so like Facebook marketing is really good for promoting your business, because Facebook marketing can get you in front of an audience that you might not have reached without Facebook marketing. Like that, it's written for a robot, it's written for the Google spiders, it's not written for a human. That kind of like, we had someone provide us with a guest blog once. I won't say, I'm going to focus really hard on not saying who from. And it was like, you immediately like raised it with me and said, look, I know this is someone that we do work with, but we can't have this on our website. You just can't read it. There's so many keywords stuffed into it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was kind of it was actually a bit of an awkward situation, wasn't it? To go back to, because this is someone that's also would pitch themselves as an SEO expert. It's not something, it's not an area I get excited about, so I don't write about it a lot or talk about it a lot. But this is someone who, it's like, kind of their topic, and it came, and I was like, no, we're not having that on the site. So it was awkward. But stick with your brand, guys. So yeah, this helpful content update really is about making sure that the sites that perform best in Google are the ones that really are written for humans and content written for humans. Okay. Now, there is, so Paul Green's just posted in the comments about an article that my husband wrote. I'd just like everyone to know that he only wrote that article after I told him about this, because he didn't know about it up until that point. And I had this conversation with him last night. I was like, you could have at least said that, honoured me in that way, but there you go. So, I mean, this is a massive move forward in terms, or it feels like it should be a massive move forward from Google's perspective. Finally, they're saying, like, no one's going to be number one on Google if their site is written for robots. Like those people that put the effort in to create human-first content, they're going to be rewarded in the algorithm. They're the ones that are now going to be page one, getting the hits. The people that are using automated tools to produce content, they're going to be the ones in the Google graveyard, as it were. Okay. But part of me, a big part of me, feels like a big update, but it's an extension of what they did in 2010. When they moved everything over from like your traditional SEO, and they went, okay, well, like what used to be like the backlinking, the keywords, all that sort of stuff, that was everything in terms of SEO. Now that's like less than 20% of the algorithm. And 55% of more than half of the algorithm is going to be about there being fresh content on your site, content that's intended to serve people. Yes, you can talk about the brand, but you should be offering, value to your audience. So it doesn't feel, like I said, it feels like a big change, but actually it's just an extension of something that's been going on for the last, 12 years. It's about 2010 when they kind of brought in Google Caffeine, which was the very first of these sort of updates to the Google algorithm that really shifted things around. So as much as it feels like a big thing, I just think it's just time. It's more of a reminder for us to pay attention to what we're doing and what we're putting out there and why we're putting it out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things that I think is important looking at it as well from our perspective and what we do with our clients, it really is more, it's not so much about what's in the content, because we already write human first. Okay, we already write for the reader rather than writing for Google. What that means is we write as if Google wasn't looking at it at all. We write as if that one person, that one ideal client is the one person reading it. We're writing it for them. And then that way, anyone reading it, they feel like they're being talked to. And if we've done the rest of our marketing right, they're always going to fit that ideal client avatar persona, however you want to describe it. So for us, I don't think it's so much around the content. That's what we've been promoting for 10 plus years. However, I do think we need to pay attention in terms of how we're actually structuring the articles when we're adding them to people's websites, when we're putting copy onto a About Us page, that kind of thing. I think this is where it's actually going to make a difference to quite a lot of people, especially if they're managing that stuff themselves. Because we would automatically, let's say it's a blog article and there's like 4 or 5 paragraphs in, that's like 800-word article. There's going to be a few paragraphs in there. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 subheadings. Okay, now what would you automatically do if it was a subheading in an article?
I would put it into an H2 tag for a start, but is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So an H2 tag. So this is basically like, if you think about when you're uploading an article, you've got like default text, you've got H1, so your headings would be H1, your subheadings would be H2, and it's like an option you can choose in the formatting. And if, sorry to teach people to suck eggs, but if you didn't realise, what that then does is that when the Google spiders are reading that page, the Google spider doesn't read the page top to bottom. It reads the title, it reads the H1. Okay, now we know what this page is about. Then it reads the H2, which helps explain in more detail what that page is about. Then maybe it actually processes the actual text. Right, so there's a lot more to it than that. But if we just think like proper, like real basic level, that's the best way of thinking about how the Google spiders read the page. So in this update, we need to shift what we're doing there, because some of those titles are going to be relevant from a Google perspective and therefore should be H2s. But some of them actually are not that relevant. They're just like another bit of the copy. So therefore, rather than, like, if your H2s are always, like for us, they're the group, from our branding guidelines, they're a specific shade of green. They're always this font, capitalized, this size of text as well. Actually, if it's something that we don't, like, we shouldn't be flagging as an H2 because it's not really relevant, then rather than making it an H2, we just need to format that text.
Yeah.
Whereas, like I said, like what we've always done is like, okay, each of those subheadings should be something that's SEO worthy and blah, blah, blah. And then you end up going, oh, there really should be a subheading there, but we're not going to put it in because that wouldn't fit. And it's like, just read like stuff like that, really thinking about that side of it. It's things like, oh, he's back. Look at him. Oh, he's smiling.
Well, yeah. Hopefully Chris has sorted it. So yeah, he did. Yeah. Just to dob him in though, even though he did help me, he said you should just go and have a cup of tea now because you won't have much bandwidth going on. So if I cut out because there's a lot of files syncing, it's not my fault.
So whilst you're off, we did do a little bit of a plug for Chris at Data Sense and like solving our IT problems and that kind of thing. And I did say, if you came back and you were looking, you didn't have nice things to say, then it probably wouldn't have been the best plug in the world.
Yeah.
But you came back beaming with a big smile on your face. So yeah, there you go. Chris at Data Sense, he can solve your IT issues and make the grumpy guy smile.
And leave you enough bandwidth just to do this.
Yeah, leaves you with enough. Chris, that could be your tagline, leaving you with enough bandwidth. He said no such thing as bad PR, look. Brilliant. Cool. Okay, so Mark, we were just talking about this content update. Okay, and we've sort of chatted a little bit about what it is. The fact that my feeling is it feels like a big update, but I don't think it is really. It's just an extension of what's been going on for years and years and years. But I did describe it as like the final nail in the coffin. And then we were just starting to talk about, like I said, from our perspective, it's not so much about shifting in the content because we've always done that sort of thing, but it's actually thinking more about how are we formatting copy on a page, like where we're using H2s and not using H2s. And I did very badly try and explain what an H2 did, what it was and what it did. Although Paul Green does still think that we're just playing battleships at this time. But I was just about to say about images as well, because this is another thing that's in there. Like I said, it's not as big a thing as it feels, but there are some really interesting parts to it. So one of the things I read was about tagging your images. So I think people don't realise, even in like when you put an image on a web page, you think you just put an image on.
Yeah.
But people don't think about the name of the file. They don't think about the alt tags and how important they are from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, because I think it always comes up, doesn't it? So it says about if it's I know it does on WordPress anyway. It says that if it's something that's descriptive, then you should put a description of the image as the alt tag in there, so that I think there's an accessibility thing that I think we always mention as well. So obviously, if a screen reader goes down, it can see what that image is about, and also I think it's still searchable, isn't it?
Yes.
On Google. So it's one of those things from the past that's still there.
Absolutely. And I think it is like people have used sort of tricks before where maybe it's a photo of a girl, girl in red hat, girl in red beanie with a thumbs up. But to describe that image, if instead we put in Facebook marketing for small business, how to generate leads on LinkedIn, that's not relevant to the image.
Yeah.
That's just SEO hacking. That kind of stuff is going to get you downgraded now.
Yeah.
And I think there's, so it's like, it's not just thinking about the pages on my site, how many of them are SEO heavy and how many of them are human heavy. It's also thinking actually like your images.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting when I suppose it's making sure you've got relevant images as well as you've got relevant text, really, I suppose, which is obviously sometimes tricky. And we're all guilty of it as different brands, because obviously we use that particular type of stock image that has just become synonymous with us over the last couple of years because it's just visual, but it doesn't necessarily have any sort of connection to what we're talking about, I suppose.
Yeah. The other interesting part of this for me is, and I think this is where people might get caught out, is this is a site-wide thing. This is not saying this page is really SEO. Like we've SEO hacked this page, that page is going to get downgraded. That's a really useful blog, so that's going to get upgraded. It is a site-wide thing.
Yeah. No, I was reading the actual Google, or one of the Google blogs, and it does say in there about actually removing content that isn't sort of relevant, or So obviously, we're reasonably good at keeping our sort of content trimmed and sort of up to date, but even we've got stuff that's probably old and irrelevant that's sitting in the back end somewhere that's still indexed. So
we literally had a conversation about it a few weeks ago. I was like, right, there's these pages here. They all like, what are we doing? They need to go be redirected. Like, can we unpublish them? Like, what are we going to do with them? Because it's a shame to lose them, because it's like valuable stuff that's been there for a long time, but it's not really aligned with where the business is right now.
Yeah. I mean, we did delete some old blogs and things, didn't we? That weren't relevant. But I know we've got stuff that's not necessarily on the front end of the site that's still sitting there as posts, and sort of there's some video content and things that's just old now, and it probably wouldn't be deemed as sort of good content because things have changed in those sort of areas, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I mean, when you look at your site, if I was looking at, like, for me to look at our site straight away, I was like, there are so many more like blogs and like useful content pages, helpful content in terms of the blogs and stuff that we put out versus our sales pages on the website.
Yeah.
So like for me, it's really easy to go, like, the balance is good for us. And it's a strategy we've always implemented, and therefore I'm not worried. In fact, it explains a few things on some of the pages where we've, over the last couple of months, we've seen increases in traffic, even though they're not really things we've done anything to promote. So like for me, I feel really good about our site in terms of this shift. But is that a naive way of looking at it? Are there other other ways to measure it? Like, how would you know?
I suppose, I mean, again, reading on the Google article, obviously it's going to take a few months for all this to sort of settle down and sort of filter out. So it is just going to be a case of looking at normal things like Google Analytics. We use another tool called Wincher to see where we're ranking for certain things as well. So again, it's whether some of those things where perhaps before, or we're not necessarily we weren't ranking for because there were people that were more SEO heavy on it. But if we can creep up because we've actually got the better content, then that's where we'll see the gains. But we won't really see that for a few months.
Yeah. And I think this is the other thing. This is something that's Google's been talking about for at least a couple of months. This has been on my radar, if not longer. I think we've had hints of it for longer. And like I said, I do feel like this is an extension of something that actually started freaking 12 years ago. But it is like whatever change Google makes now, it could be 6 months before you realise the impact of it on your site. Because first of all, it rolls out. Then it takes time for the differences to be noticed. Then once you do notice a difference, you're trying to figure out what it was that triggered it. So it's kind of one of those things, isn't it? It's not, don't suddenly stop optimizing your site right now. I think it is more a case of, right, we know this is happening. We know this is something that Google's been working on for a long time anyway. What we need to be doing is like every piece of content we add to the site, whether it is a sales page or a blog article, or you're updating your About Us page. I think it is about, like, why would someone come to this page? Once they've read this, do they have all the answers they need? And if the answer is, yeah, like if I write an article on how to get leads out of LinkedIn, okay, if at the end of that article, that person doesn't need to look anywhere else, they've got a clear answer to that question, then that's helpful content.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, going forward, that needs to be the measure. Using something like obviously we use WordPress, using something like Yoast as an SEO plugin, they'll be keeping up to the Google changes, adjusting their guidance based on that. And like I said, it is about sort of, if you follow their guidance, for example, there's like a minimum level to achieve to optimize a page. We should still optimize. We just need to be careful to not over optimize.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing.
That was a bit of one of the sort of contradictions I saw in the Google article, because obviously Yoast, which we use, and there are other sort of plugins as well, but obviously it gives you that minimum word level, whereas in the Google article it actually says we don't have a minimum word level. So does it affect?
I think this is the thing. It's like I had someone challenge me on the wording. I can't remember who it was, but only in the last few weeks. So like, I thought articles were supposed to be this long, and I was like, well, they can be as long or as short as you like.
As long as it's relevant.
As long as it's relevant, as long as it has value. So don't worry about that too much. I mean, admittedly, I would aim for minimum 500 words twice a month, not because that's what Google says, but because I feel that's manageable and it's enough to be a positive. And that's something that I think most people can do consistently, irrelevant of how busy or not you are. Like if you're mega busy or you hate writing or whatever it is, if it's easy for you to do 250 words every week, then that's fine. Set that as your target. If it's easy for you to do 1,000 words once a month, that's what you should be doing. So I think it is like, this is all about keeping it human. So yes, it should be human for the reader. We should be writing it for a human. But I think actually we're humans too. So we need to make sure we're setting ourselves why can't I talk today? Setting ourselves a content goal that is actually going to work for us as humans as well. We're going to be able to fit that in. We're going to be able to manage it. I just feel like that's really, really important.
Yeah. No.
What's going to be most interesting is that there will be a lot of people that are sort of jumping all over this, going, you need to rewrite this, you need to rewrite that, you need to like have your whole site re-optimized and that sort of stuff. And it might be for some people that might 100% be the case. But I think it's really important that like before you go down that kind of route, that, you know, test your own content. It's another reminder, go and look at your own site. For most people, they probably haven't read their product pages or services pages since either they first had their site created or the last time they refreshed it, which for most people is really like, I mean, how, like what, once every 4 or 5 years?
A lot of people, yeah, if that sort of thing, unless, you know, you've still got people that have got obviously pure static sites out there, so, you know, they're not even adding content to them.
Yeah.
So it's probably those sort of sites that might get penalised.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay. Like I said, I know things are 1st of the month, 1st of September.
How is it the 1st of September?
Summer is over. We've got new clients launching. We've got hopefully resolved IT issues. So I'm going to draw things to a close. Obviously, we've just talked SEO stuff today, which is, I think everyone knows, is not my passion topic. But there are bits of it where I go, oh, well, actually, this is worth paying attention to. And like I said, this change is one of them, hence me flagging it to a bunch of people. Paul Green's asked if we've got any guests coming up in the future, Green Umbrella Live Lunch. I'm not sure, but we do need to sort some out because we've got quite a busy September with lots of events and things happening. It's like September through to October. I think there's permanently going to be one of us missing or two of us missing. And actually one of the Thursdays will all be missing. So we've got to deal with that one as well. But yeah, we need to get some guests together. So get your thinking caps on, guys. Who can we invite on? Any suggestions? Pop them in the comments. And yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. We will see everyone next Thursday, 12 noon. I'm looking at the calendar because I'm like, yeah, I'm here next Thursday, 12 noon. Like, next Thursday, 12 noon. We'll see you then. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. See you later. Bye for now.